Welcome to the new season of the Live Your Spa Life show. The Spa in Spa Life stands for Seek Power Always, that divine power within you to do what you're here to do. The theme for this season is intentional living. Amazing people like you share ways to live by design and with purpose to ensure that this short ride of life occurs with choice, physically, financially, spiritually, and in your relationships to create a world-class life. In these times of uncertainty, it's time for you to move past the distractions and start trusting yourself more through your God-giving knowingness. No one truly knows better what's best for you than you. In this season, you'll have plenty of examples of people choosing their best life and creating a positive impact through intentional living. Thank you for sharing your precious time with us and being part of the Live Your Spa Life conversation. With us today is Natasha Bussey, a professional certified life coach and getting her second master's degree in clinical mental health counseling. Natasha is an immigrant from Russia who came to the U.S. shortly after graduating with her applied math program, literally with $20 in her wallet. She built her life in this country and has created a successful 18-year career in the technology world. In the last few years, she underwent a huge personal transformation. Having gone through several highly traumatic experiences throughout her life, like childhood abuse, domestic violence, and narcissistic abuse, she has embarked on the journey towards healing and happiness and immersed herself in the world of personal improvement. Natasha, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Diane. I'm really excited to be here today.
Well, it is great having you, and you having walked through so many different challenges, you have the insight of, changing your life, having that transformation, and you have now dedicated the second half of your life of helping others as well in that process. I'm sure for those who have heard that you came to this country with $20, I'm sure the question that comes to people's mind is, where do you go from there? How do you start building your life with so little in your pocket?
Great question. I wish I had the recipe. I can tell you about my experience. I can't probably relate to a lot of people, but in my experience, I would say the grace of God, the grace of a lot of great people. Don't ever underestimate the goodness in people and the good relationships. Sometimes people who you don't think are going to be important can play a crucial role to you. Gratefully, I had a good education from Russia. My family was very dedicated to this. My mom was a stickler to straight A's, so that helped a lot, right? And I would say resilience and perseverance. I mean, you can't get us through education. The drive, either there or is it not? Oh, it's not, right? And so for me, I guess coming from a difficult background, it was never a choice of just giving up. And I guess that was kind of built into my system from ground up. So I just, a lot of hustle, a lot of hard work, a lot of looking for opportunities and not giving up.
So great. I love that because, so many times people will go, well, I had this thing happen in my past, and they get stuck in those situations and they can't always see like what's the possibility of their future. And, this is such an important conversation for our listeners who may be in a situation that is challenging right now, that maybe is not sure which way to go. But I love that just reaching out and just asking someone, right? It's amazing to see. We don't know why God puts certain people in our life, that we get put in a certain direction, and that can be really helpful. And adding on top of that, coming to a country that you hadn't been to, before, did you know how to speak English?
To some degree, I did get a basic English education, a little bit more advanced, but that English is taught by Russian teachers who barely know it themselves. So coming here was, I would say the first year probably grasped about 10 to 20% of information that was thrown at me. And also what I didn't realize is that American English is full of slang, metaphors, character references. So really like of pure clinical English, there's only a small percentage, right? And so that was very difficult in the beginning. I had to catch up on a lot of movies. I had to catch up on a lot of metaphors and sayings and things like that. So that was quite a ride.
Yeah, I bet. Well, congratulations for you to just jumping in with both feet and just seeing what's possible and seeing like what could be different for you. And I know along the way, a lot of people, they experience fear, and you have a really great kind of relationship with fear and how our past experiences are related to that. Can you share a little bit about how fear popped up for you and how you look at fear?
Yeah, I mean, I guess how I looked at fear early on was different. How I look at fear right now is in a lot more friendly way, right? Before, fear was, while you feel it, you still have to persevere. But fear played a lot of role in my early life, right, in my young life, and God knows what opportunities I did not pursue, right, because I didn't have a better relationship with fear and understanding of how to overcome that and what it really is. What I feel right now, the fear is, it's a kind of an extrapolation of our bad experiences in the past, combined with our personal insecurities, combined with the outside external perspective of us, right? What we're told when we're kids by our parents, by our teachers, that we're not be good enough, pretty enough, smart enough, things like that, right? And so all of that combined creates a story. The danger of that is we don't understand that, and we go through many, many years and decades of our lives, and that story sinks from our conscience into our subconscious. So 95% of our brains actually operate in the subconscious, something we don't realize. So there's if you think about a laptop, right? You have an operating system that runs in the background. There are thousands of processes that are going on that we don't see. Like, we use laptop when we see, like, open up a Word, right, to write a document. That's all we see. That's your conscience, right? But it's a very small percentage. So that story becomes so permanent that you begin kind of memorizing the emotions, memorizing your reactions, memorizing your actions based on that. And so that's where the challenge is, right? How do you change that? If you know Dr. Joe Dispenza, he talks a lot about we use our familiar past to create a predictable future, because that's how we operate based on that. The scary part is there have been many studies that have proven that 80% of our thoughts are negative. 80%. So 4 out of 5 thoughts we think are actually a negative and probably not helping us in many ways. Another scary stat is 95% of our thoughts come from yesterday. So if you combine those two, you're basically doomed to repeat day after day after day the same negative pattern of thinking, right? So really, to change that, it does take some work, and it does take a lot of momentum and torque to just kind of shift that.
Right. Well, I appreciate you shining the light on that. I like to talk about, your mind is like a bad neighborhood. You don't want to go in there by yourself. You want to be able to see like what's in there, what kind of support I can have. And, it's always great to give the listeners some tools around that. And you've got some great ones around having like a thought log and having I am statements. I'd love for you to touch on that, because anything we can do to shift our mindset and look at things differently is such a helpful step forward.
Yeah, so I don't like the tools just for the tool's sake. So I'll tell you kind of how I would apply them, right? So if we talked about that, we create a negative story and we don't even understand that. So first of all, you need to start understanding, what is the story I'm telling myself, right? So whatever that sinks in your conscience from your subconscious, you still can catch yourself. And so, as you mentioned, the thought log is a great tool. Literally, you can just buy a little notepad. I used to have 3 columns, the time of the day, the thought, and I'll tell you about the third one in just a second. And so I used to set an alarm early on when I was working with myself, because you have to catch yourself. You have to remind yourself. It's not a habit yet. So I set an alarm on my phone up to 10 times a day, and I would catch myself. What am I thinking at that time? And the third column, I would say, is it true? Is it a fact? Because often we tell ourselves, oh, I can't get this job because I'm too old. Well, is that a fact, right? Or is that a projection of your mind or your, fear? So, the thought log is a great thing. And then how do you create a new story, right? Like, okay, so you understand your limitations, you understand the scary stories you're telling yourself that limit you. So how do you create a new one? Again, it's not going to be a habitual. It's going to have to be a work of conscience and repeat. First of all, you have to describe who you are, and not in terms of an employee or a mother or something else, right? Imagine if you're on an island by yourself. Who are you? So I am statements, you can Google it, there are plenty of examples, really describe you as a person. I am loyal, I am responsible, I am faithful, things like that. So those are going to be your shining kind of star, your North Star of who you want to be, right? And then from there, you also describe your core values and kind of standards, right? So I will be acting polite no matter what. So if you're in a traffic, somebody cuts you off, your reaction is not going to be, lay on the honk and, flip a finger. It's going to be forgiving them, refocusing them, and wishing them good luck. And that's not going to be natural, right? So you have to kind of remind yourself. And so my I am statements were, again, on my phone on the lock screen, so I can look at them at any time, remind myself, right? And so every morning I would set an intention to focus on probably 3 or 4. You can't do, I would suggest don't do more than 7 total because it's just too much. And then the third one is goals, right? So now that you know who you are and how you are and what you want to be, where you want to go, right? And the goals are going to be crucial in that. And so setting goals and really gauging your interactions and your priorities throughout the day against that really creates a really good roadmap, right? Going from point A to point B. So you can kind of have a comparison point of, why am I doing this? Is this important? Is this good for me?
Right. It's so important. And when you can break it down in that way and take it step by step, we can actually have some actionable steps to change what are some of these long habits and patterns that have had us through our life. And so part of our discussion is we start looking at, what are some of the things that have been disempowering in our life? And then what are things that are empowering in our life? Like, what is that road look like? What does that journey look like? And in that, you've also mentioned about like what in our lives that actually lead to being disempowered. So I'd love for you to kind of talk a little bit about both of those.
Well, disempowered, I mean, we're humans with nervous systems, with priorities, with things that are dear to our hearts, right? So sometimes life, just, takes us down a little bit, right? And look, nobody escapes bad things, at some point, bad things will happen, right? And so how you manage that, how resilient you are in those scenarios, right? Will determine actually how unscarred you're going to come out of that, or are you going to drown in this for a long time and create additional traumas or additional fears or additional bad stories, right? So I would say, first of all, is not knowing who you are, right? And a lot of that is created by the external validation, external opinions. Look, we're living in the world where from the ground up, when we're young, we're raised by comparison, right? Are you good enough? Are you succeeding at these subjects? Are you, getting A's? Are you good enough to apply for college or actually make it there? So we kind of designed the standard for the kids, right? And we're raising them in accordance to what we think a good social entity is going to be successful in this world. We're not asking what is your personal strength and how we can raise and reinforce that, right? And so we're from the ground up, we're really gauging ourselves against the world, against other standards, against what other people are thinking of us. And then if you add social media and that fake comparison to some happy lives and everybody is super happy, right? It creates insecurities on top of that, right? Plus, you just go through life and sometimes things don't work out, right? So instead of taking this as a lesson, we often add it up to the negative story and saying, okay, we got fired from this job. That could be because I'm not good enough, right? And so instead of taking it as a lesson, adjusting it and overcoming that in a positive way and using it as a lesson, as a gift, we actually allow that to sink in our brain and add to the negative story.
Right. Well, and when you talk about comparison, I mean, even in your own story, right, there was a comparison to how you grew up and you didn't have those examples. So getting into relationship, even though it wasn't maybe as bad as growing up, it still wasn't of your highest and best good, right? And then we put ourselves in these situations where we see it. And so a lot of times people don't see on the other side of standing in your power is sometimes making choices that other people may not understand, right? So for instance, you've shared that you are going through a divorce, and that is actually you claiming yourself and being empowered. And so a lot of people are like, oh, that's so sad, that's so terrible. But I'd love for you to share how you were able to kind of discover yourself, and when you know who you are, you can make better decisions.
Yeah, part of the reason why I wanted to get in this world of helping other people is because for about 38 years, I didn't know I had those issues. I was educated, and I was in a professional world, and I was around a lot of smart people, but I simply was not even exposed to the idea that something might be not optimal, that maybe I'm creating my own problems. And that understanding of personal impact on my own negative circumstances was completely just not even obvious to me. And so I just like a lot of people, I blamed the outside world. I blamed men for being, putting me through bad things, right? And so that personal kind of, impact on this is really, really scary. And so I want to bring a lot of awareness to people that you don't have to be a victim of your circumstances. You actually have so much power to change that. And a lot of people just don't know. Just simple awareness of that would be a great gift for a lot of people, right? So for me, yes, I'm going through divorce, and look, it's never a pleasant thing. However, for me, it really is the end of a cycle. That's the way I call it. So through my past circumstances, as you mentioned, I had tendency of picking the wrong relationships. And again, because of pure unawareness of my personal traumas and my personal kind of preferences towards things that are not good for me, and not knowing myself at all. So not being true to myself, not being true to supporting myself, to having self-care and self-love, right? I didn't even know what it was. And so, yeah, for me, really, this is the example of ending a cycle and being more congruent and aligned with who I am, really understanding my past lessons and past, experiences really as a gift. And this is a tall order, right? To take something that was really brutal for you, to take it as a gift and forgive and move forward. And, through that, I've learned who I am. That gave me a purpose in life. I'm really happy about this, right? And really raised my standards and became proud of who I am.
Well, again, congratulations on doing the work of doing that examination of really, it's not easy, right? You don't just wake up one day and be like, okay, everything's fine, right? You're looking through, okay, what are the patterns? And we start recognizing, a lot of times people talk about we get into the same relationships over and over again. It's just a different person because we haven't learned the lesson, right? We're going to continue to have things presented to us until we learn that lesson, till we see what is there for us. And so it's always a great opportunity for us to see what's working, right? What's not working, and have some of the tools to be able to look at that. And like you said, it's more like, how are you using the tools and what does that actually look like? So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about what is the relationship between your thoughts, emotions, and actions.
This is my favorite topic because it's such a direct relationship. And again, like we should teach that from school, years, from probably kindergarten. So a lot of people don't understand that there is a very direct chain between their thoughts and their life. And to some people, it becomes like a topic of spiritual or some kind of some voodoo magic. It's not. It's our biology, it's our chemistry, it's our neurology, it's our brain function, right? So our brains actually largely are designed to protect us, make us survive, and keep us complacent. And so to that degree, so brain is really constantly scanning for, that's why the negative is so sticky to us, because the brain is taking all of these experiences and making sure that you are not repeating them, or is sending you signals that, hey, this is danger, 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 right? So these the emotions are a direct symptom of your thoughts, often subconscious. As I said, 95% of everything that's going on in your brain is subconscious. So you don't even register or realize what is going on. You feel the outcome of that, the emotion. Early on in life, I had fear of bad emotions, right? And also had the stigma that bad emotions are bad. You should not experience anger or irritation. That's just bad. Well, actually, there are plenty of books written on the positive side of negative emotions. Emotions are just signals, right? So if something is not right, it's just sending you a signal that you should address something, right? So if you have anger, maybe somebody is mistreating you, right? And unjustly so. If you feel irritation, then maybe somebody is really annoying you. Can you change your circumstance, or can you change your relationship to that and maybe not get annoyed at traffic? Because it is what it is, right? So you have the power of doing that, but it's really just a signal. But the challenge is that based on our emotional state that's driven by a lot of possibly even negative subconscious, then we make we do something with this, right? We take an action, a small action. So if I'm pissed off because I woke up with some kind of fearful story, right? And now I'm pissed off, or now I'm terrified, I'm insecure. How am I going to approach other people? Just on the small things. What am I going to say? How am I going to look? Is it going to open opportunities for me or close that? Am I going to appear difficult or inspiring? So from that perspective, it really creates a set of actions that you take. Well, what is a set of actions? That's your life. And so we really create our own roadmap. And, my biggest revelation through this whole journey was that we are 100% responsible for everything that goes on in our lives. And that is a hard thing to do because you have to be brutally honest with yourself. But I think that is, if you don't kind of adopt that mentality, it's going to be difficult to get through this journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's so important. I mean, when we talk about intentional living, it's like really about examining our life. It's looking at, what's working, what's not working, and to be able to use all the different aspects of ourselves in doing that. Which reminds me, one of a kind of a fun question I like to ask my guests is that we intentionally create our bedroom, our kitchen, our office. And we live differently in each of those different spaces. So what's your favorite room in your home and why?
Oh, great question. I am such a nester that I'm very meticulous about creating. You could probably see that behind me. I design my spaces in a way that makes me feel home, inspired, happy, calm, peaceful. So I would say right now, probably, and I tinker with that all the time. I would say right now, probably my living room.
Mm-hmm. I love it.
Because I feel like I've got it to the point where when I walk in, I just say, and it feels like home. It feels great. I'm very peaceful there. And so, yeah, I would say my living room probably.
So great. It's so fun that because everyone has these different spaces that, it's really about walking into that room and feeling that sense of home, feeling secure. It's something that we've created. It makes us feel happy. And so these are kind of the things that translate into all the different aspects of our life and have us really look at those things. And, we talked a little bit about the mind, and I know that there are different aspects, and we can get into, as our theme for this season is intentional living. What are some of the ways that you live intentionally?
So I would probably break it down by different areas. It's like, when your right arm is not working, then you can't really do as many things, right? So I feel like it's different parts of that I combine into this notion of intentional living. First of all, is working with my mind, right? My mind, now that I know the impact that my brain, my mind, my stories in my head, my subconscious plays in all of this story, which is absolutely paramount, right? I have to work with it, and not only in a positive way, but also address some of the not so good parts, right? So being aware of yourself, kind of know thyself, right? And work with thyself in that regard. So if I know I'm a quick learner, I'm not going to be afraid going taking on another subject or going get another master's, right? Because I know I can do this. But I also know I'm a procrastinator, right? So how do I not get in trouble with that and being honest with yourself? So using systems like time blocking and some other systems that allow me to be productive and not let myself slide, right? It's also going to be important. And working with your mind, I mean, there are plenty of tools out there. For me, look, life is hectic and overwhelming. And especially if you want to, reach your goals, you have to push yourself even outside of your daily kind of routine. So brain gets overwhelmed, right? And so I use my brain as my tool. And if my tool gets tired, I give it a break. So I sit down and I meditate, and I take time for doing so, right? Or sometimes if I'm too tired, I listen to binaural beats, and you can have binaural beats for focus and creation. You can have for restoration and relaxation. Actually, there's a study that proven that 20 minutes of binaural beats can replace an hour of nap. So sometimes when I have 15, 20 minutes, I'll just put them in my ears and get some rest. So you just have to work with this really and understand it's a tool, right? And you can optimize it, or you can let it slide.
Yeah, absolutely. This is so great. You've talked a lot about how, the mind affects, and I know that you also have different ways of looking at, your emotions, and looking at, you talk about like your soul as well. Talk a little bit about, well, actually, I want to end with that, because one of the things that I actually have an acronym for the different aspects of ourself, and I don't know if it's helpful or not, but I call it PIES, because it's PIES, and that's like for the sweetness of life, and it's to remind us to look at all of those different aspects of our life. So the P is like physical, right? Your physical body. You've talked about having movement and those things.
Yeah.
The I is for intellect, right? It's your brain. It's asking those things of your brain and how it's protecting you. And the E is emotions, right? And it's like, what are those things? What are those indicators? And then I have S as spiritual, because I believe that you can get, listen to your internal self, get those spiritual messages. You talk about the soul, right? About having those aspects of it. So I'd love to have us, end on one. I know people are going to want to stay in contact with you. I'd love for you to share that. We'll also post that in here. And if you touch on the soul aspect of it.
Oh, and soul can be without going too deep, because for some people it's deeply spiritual. For some, it's just kind of making yourself feel fulfilled, joyful, peaceful, right? And so from any perspective, I think between your pies, which I love this acronym, I'm going to probably use this if you're okay with that.
Absolutely.
I love to steal it. So yeah, I feel like the other three probably will not work as well without this, because you can be effective and motivated and everything, but if you don't have the emotional and heartfelt why, I think all of that is not going to be to a degree that you want. It probably won't give you the same happiness. For me, look, this world is a bit harsh. We're not focused on helping each other. We're not raising compassion in many cases, right? And so, we get wrapped up in our minds and looking at the world from our point of view and our perspective, almost like in a self-absorbed kind of way, my problems, my issues, and things like that. This is what creates this polarization, dichotomy, and pulling people apart, right? And that makes us lonely, which we're communal creatures, right? It's required for our mental health. And so being closer to people, raising positive emotions. There have been plenty of studies right now. Science is proving that just creating a feeling of gratitude heals depression and a lot of other issues. Serving others is the same way. You have an issue, like Jordan Peterson is a world-known psychologist. He said, if you have a problem, go serve others, because that will not only open up your eyes on the other people's pains, it also will make you feel like you are not alone in this, right? That we all have something we're going through. And it's really from scientific perspective, there are huge benefits from hormonal level when you're helping others. There's dopamine effect, and it's really making you happy. But at the same token, it really gives your life a purpose. So do something soulful, heartfelt, work with children, help others, even on a small basis. It doesn't have to be heroic. Just do something that doesn't just serve you.
Yes, absolutely. Well, amen to that. I love it. Well, let me just finish up here with how can people best get a hold of you?
A couple of different ways. I'm on social media. I'm on Instagram, natashacoaching_.com. I'm on Facebook. You can also find my website, natashacoaching.com. Very easy to remember. I actually post my personal cell phone on it, so you can always reach out, text me, call me. I'm happy to chat and happy to answer your questions.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your journey. And it's just a pleasure having you with us here today.
Thank you, Diane. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And thank you to our listeners out there. I mean, what are you taking away from this? It's all about, giving gratitude and grace, right? Like bringing more of that into your life, into this season, to give yourself that examining. It can be really hard to look at, everywhere you go, there you are, right? And so have you had a chance to look at, what has happened in your life? And yes, there's a lot of external circumstances, but we have a lot more control of our reaction to them and how we can adapt and really step into changing the way we think and the way we look at things. So please share this episode, get it out there. Time to, especially in the beginning of the year, to examine your life, see what kind of life that you'd like to live. And until we connect again, live your spa life. Bye for now. Bye-bye.